Imagine waking up tomorrow and finding a strange yet deeply tempting contract on the table next to your bed. This contract offers you something incredible: a life completely free of stress, infinite financial security, perfect health, and an intelligent system that takes care of every single detail of your day, from your meals and relationships to your exact career path. You will never feel anxious again. You will never face the pain of failure or the bitterness of rejection. But there is one condition. To sign this contract, you must voluntarily surrender your freedom to make any major decision for the rest of your life. At first glance, your logical mind might scream in absolute refusal, believing that freedom is the most valuable thing you own. But if we dive just a little deeper into the dark corridors of your subconscious, we will find a hidden voice whispering for you to sign it. This internal hesitation is not a scene from a science fiction movie. It is the oldest and most complex dilemma in human psychology. We constantly repeat that we are creatures who love freedom, and that we are ready to sacrifice everything for our independence. But psychological studies and the history of human behavior reveal a dark and deeply unsettling truth. Many humans, under specific conditions of stress or fear, lean towards giving up their absolute freedom. Freedom means chaos. It means total responsibility. And most importantly, it means living in a permanent state of uncertainty. From an evolutionary standpoint, the human brain was not designed to be perfectly free. It was designed to keep you alive. To understand this stark contradiction, we must look at what happens inside your head every time you make a choice. The prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for analytical thinking and complex choices, carries a massive cognitive load to do its job. In the modern world, we make thousands of decisions every single day, from choosing our clothes to determining the trajectory of our future. This continuous burden leads to a psychological and neurological phenomenon known as decision fatigue. With every choice you make, you drain a portion of your mental energy. By the end of the day, your exhausted brain begins looking for the shortest and easiest paths. A system that dictates your actions drastically reduces this cognitive load. This reduction is linked to complex changes in the brain that quiet the signals of stress and grant you a profound sense of comfort. To bring this idea closer to home, think about a normal weekend night. Why do you sometimes spend 40 minutes scrolling through streaming platforms only to end up watching an old show where you already know exactly what happens? Because your brain, exhausted from making work decisions all week, refuses to process the burden of a new choice. It prefers to seek refuge in the comforting safety of the familiar. Surrendering the freedom of choice in that moment is your brain's biological mechanism for resting. But the issue runs much deeper than just conserving cognitive energy. Evolutionary psychology tells us that our brains are hardwired with a powerful phenomenon called the intolerance of uncertainty. In ancient times, the unknown meant deadly danger. If you were not sure what was hiding behind the bushes, it was likely a predator waiting for you. Today, the danger is no longer the harsh natural environment, but rather the unknown future. Freedom opens the door to infinite possibilities, and this puts the amygdala, the fear-processing center of the brain, on high alert. This psychological bias explains many complex human behaviors in our daily lives. It explains, for example, why someone might stay in a job they absolutely hate or remain in a miserable relationship for years. The subconscious mind prefers a hell it knows and can predict over an unknown heaven that requires taking a terrifying step into the dark. The safety provided by routine, even a harsh routine, remains less terrifying to the brain than the freedom to determine an unguaranteed fate. This existential fear of the burden of freedom is exactly what drove the famous psychoanalyst Erich Fromm to coin his timeless concept, the escape from freedom. Fromm noticed a strange phenomenon in the middle of the 20th century. Modern humans had broken free from the chains of the past and become independent individuals. But this sudden freedom did not bring them ultimate happiness. Instead, it threw them into an ocean of anxiety and isolation. The psychological weight of being a solitary individual, entirely responsible for every success or failure, is a crushing burden. To escape this tearing anxiety, the mind actively searches for a new master to belong to and dissolve into. Whether this master is a political authority, a rigid ideology, or even a consumerist system that tells them exactly how to live. If you believe you are completely immune to this psychological escape, and that you possess a solid will that never bends, let us take a brief journey into the basement of Yale University in the year 1961. Here, psychologist Stanley Milgram conducted one of the most studied experiments in history. You might already know the setup. Participants were instructed by a researcher in a white coat to deliver increasingly powerful electric shocks to a stranger in the next room every time they answered a question incorrectly. Despite hearing agonizing screams, about 65% of normal people pushed the shocks to the maximum, potentially lethal level. We often hear this story, but the true psychological revelation is not that humans are inherently evil. The real secret lies in how quickly the mind abandons its moral responsibility when an authority figure says the magic words, "I take full responsibility." When a person transfers the responsibility of their decision to a higher authority, they provide themselves with a psychological shield. This shield protects them from the agony of guilt and the heavy anxiety of individual decision-making. The psychological safety provided by surrendering independence is a safe haven the mind retreats to when escaping confrontation. In our real lives, we see this principle repeating constantly in less dramatic ways. When employees participate in unethical practices or harsh corporate decisions, the internal justification is almost always, "I was just following orders." Handing over free will to an administrative system grants the individual a comfortable psychological exemption from bearing the weight of the choice. But authority does not always come in the form of direct orders or people wearing white coats. Sometimes the system we enslave ourselves to is society itself. In the 1950s, psychologist Solomon Asch conducted a classic experiment on social conformity. A single participant was placed in a room full of actors pretending to be participants. They were shown lines drawn on cards and asked an incredibly obvious question about which lines matched in length. The actors purposely gave the wrong answer with absolute confidence. When it was the real participants' turn, they found themselves in a violent psychological conflict. Their eyes told them the truth, but the entire group agreed on the lie. The result was staggering. Around 75% of participants abandoned their own sensory perception at least once, choosing the wrong answer just to blend in with the group. The connection to daily life is universally familiar. Think of the last time you were in a business meeting or a family gathering, and everyone agreed on an opinion that completely contradicted your own convictions. Often, you find yourself nodding in agreement or staying silent, just to avoid the agonizing awkwardness of being the opposing voice. Neuroscience research suggests that social rejection activates some of the same brain regions involved in processing physical pain. Standing alone with your freedom, holding on to your opinion against the system or the group, is an act that causes literal neurological pain. Therefore, the human mind strongly leans towards avoiding it. At this point, you might wonder, if we have such an intense tendency to conform and seek safety, where does that overwhelming desire for rebellion and independence come from? This is where self-determination theory steps in, formulated by psychologists Edward Deci and Richard Ryan. The theory confirms that humans are not just machines looking for comfort. We possess a fundamental psychological need for autonomy and a sense of competence. We need to feel that we are holding the steering wheel, otherwise our mental health deteriorates into depression and apathy. But here lies the most brilliant psychological trap in our modern world. Modern systems and technologies realized that forced slavery creates rebellion, because it directly collides with our psychological need for self-determination. Therefore, their methods evolved to rely on what is called the status quo bias. The human mind always prefers keeping things exactly as they are, because change requires massive energy and risk. Systems design our lives in a way that makes staying inside the system the easiest default option, while breaking out requires a monumental effort. You feel free because, in theory, you could completely change your life path tomorrow. But practically, you will not do it. The safety net laid out for you by the system makes true independence an exhausting choice. Modern algorithms are the perfect application of this psychological principle. They do not force you to read anything or buy anything. They simply arrange the architecture of choice around you. By analyzing your habits, the algorithm creates safe digital spaces that never challenge your beliefs or trigger your anxiety. We hand over our cognitive autonomy to these systems daily, with a smile and deep satisfaction. Because they spare us the pain of critical thinking and fulfill our deep need for belonging and safety, without ever making us feel like we are tied down. If we reach this level of understanding, it becomes clear that true freedom is not a natural, comfortable state where the mind rests, as we often imagine. It is an exceptional and terrifying state. To be free means to endure the pain of isolation sometimes, to face the possibility of catastrophic failure, and to accept that you are the first and last person responsible for your destiny. Organized safety is the comfortable gravity that always pulls us downward. Practicing freedom is a continuous and exhausting process of flying against that gravity. The next time you make a major life decision and believe it expresses your absolute freedom, stop for a moment and observe what is happening inside your mind. Look for that hidden feeling of comfort. Did you choose this path because you truly want it? Or because your subconscious quietly guided you toward the path of least resistance and maximum safety? If your brain is biologically and psychologically programmed to seek safety and avoid pain above all else, the question that must haunt you tonight is this: are all your decisions truly free, or are you voluntarily choosing comfortable servitude in a prison where you cannot even see the walls? If this psychological journey made you rethink the nature of your choices and the illusion we call freedom, do not forget to hit the like button to support this kind of deep analysis. Make sure to subscribe to MENTRA and turn on the notification bell. As we aggressively push forward with our plan to publish 3 videos every week, we promise to keep taking you on cinematic thought experiments that reveal the hidden mechanics of your mind and challenge everything you know about reality. Tell us in the comments, when was the last time you chose safety over freedom? We would love to hear your thoughts, and we will see you in the next dimension.